So here's what I want to tell you. Most economic books are so boring and complicated. They use complex words like NPV, PPP, CPM. Ugh, I don't get it. So then I found this book. This book used different approach to explain economy. Now I'm curious. What does this book actually tell us? Let's ask our friends. Sure. Chapter 4? It's about, well, have you ever worked so hard to find a solution of a problem just to find that the solution is a simple one? Well, okay, let me give you an example. Take vaccination, for example. Back in the days, polio was such a horrible thing, right? And we lost so many lives because of it. But today, we have vaccine readily available for everyone. Some governments even can hook their people up for free for that. So, in retrospect, vaccination is such a simple and cheap solution for polio. However, in the process, we lost so many lives because of it. And that's what we call law of unintended consequences. That is, when actions that outcomes are not foreseen or intended by a purposeful action. Unfortunately, cheap and simple solutions are not the popular ones. We tend to, I think, lean towards the more complex solution for that, where actually the solutions is in cheap and simple.
Sure. This chapter talks about altruism. So altruism is a practice of self-respect and doing things for the well-being of others. There is a belief that everyone is out for themselves, and so people will make decisions only if it helps them out. However, recent studies have suggested that people are also altruistic to some degree, which has thrown a wrench into the idea that people are self-interest beings who make decisions that are in their own best interests. The authors spent a fair bit of time debunking the idea that people are unselfishly altruistic. Yes, people will help others, but they often do so for self-serving reasons, including reducing their own guilt, or because they hope to receive similar benefits, or because someone is watching. One example the author used to illustrate this has to do with organ donation. Would a stranger give another stranger one of his kidney out of goodness of his heart? To the detriment of those needing a transplant, US law prohibits monetary gain from organ donation. As a result, there are 80,000 US people in need of kidney, but only 16,000 transplants will be performed that year. In Iran, where donors are paid, there is no such gap. Thus, in the world of economics, altruism is not effective.
So, in the last chapter, it focused on the issue of global warming. Firstly, the book debunks many of the misleading and exaggerated facts disseminated by the media. There appears to be scientific consensus that the Earth is warming and the humans are contributing to this. But how humans are contributing appears to be widely misunderstood. For example, animal farming industry contribute 50% more greenhouse gases than the entire transportation sector. If humans change their diets from, like we say, beef to kangaroo, it would help the environment than all people drove the hybrid vehicle. Others believe that the problem of global warming can be solved by encouraging or perhaps forcing people to make sacrifices. But people are not really philanthropic to make this happen. And this topic was more fully discussed in a previous chapter, and therefore this is unlikely to work on a grand scale.
Sure. Actually, this chapter is about supply and demand. Do you know about supply and demand? Okay. So this chapter begins by the issue about gender inequality, which women have been abused and discriminated against over time in many ways. Although the situation has improved over the last few decades, women still suffer the effect of discrimination in terms of salary, where a significant wage differential between men and women continues to stick out despite increased educational opportunities. However, there's a labor market in which women clearly dominate the supply, and that is the prostitution market. Apparently, the relative wages and current dollars become the reason why so many women consider working as a prostitute. The chapter also explained that the market for labor services, even prostitution, operates similar like the market for any other goods and services. Changes in supply or demand will impact the changes in wages and quantity, also create additional incentive for supplier and consumers to enter or leave the market. For instance, criminalizing prostitution and arresting some suppliers can impact to the decrease in the supply of prostitutes. Well, the chapter also talking about teaching, which women also dominate this area. However, most of the content in this chapter mainly talking about business prostitution and how it can relate with the economy. Hi, what's up? Okay, so in this chapter, the authors describe how the months are impacting on the birth of babies. For instance, the babies that are born in the month of the year where the Ramadan is ongoing can be more likely to have more disorders after they born because of the mothers are not getting enough of nutrients. So in this chapter also, in the beginning of the chapter, the authors also stated that the terrorism can be considered sufficient. For example, the direct causes of the attack of September 11 were very massive and the economic losses very high until it reaches 300 million US dollar. Not just that, but another 1,000 extra traffic deaths in the United States as the after effect of because people are stopped flying and drove around instead. The author also elaborated on how the September 11 attack can be easily overwhelm most of the emergency rooms around the country. As the result, ER in the DC rated the last because it is very crowded, slow, and disorganized. What it may become the last rank is because the lack of information flow. So in the ending of the chapter 2 elaborates the factor to distinguish a terrorist from the vast population. For example, there is a guy that can be considered as the typical terrorist is that they don't have they don't have saving account, they don't withdraw money from the ATM, and they also don't have life insurance. So based on the characteristic, it will be the terrorist interest to purchase life insurance so that they won't be identified as the terrorists, but as a result there are many people can be falsely accused of being a terrorist. That's all. Do you understand?
This book became a reminder for me that economy is a dynamic subject that sometimes may not happen accordingly to what we learn at school. What about you, Shifa?
I think for me, reading this chapter has been giving me such a significant impact related to the economic concept. For the example itself, I think it makes me amused to read more of the chapter. And also, supply and demand can be related to the prostitutes or other things that we never thought it will use supply and demand concept.
I learned that we also must look from an environmentally friendly aspect. If an entrepreneur also cares about their environment in their business, it will add the value to their own trust, and they will be very easy to get the trust of investors to give and entrust their assets to increase the business capital and the value of the entrepreneur.
So as for me, there are several things that I learned from reading SuperFreakonomics. The first thing is that I begin to know the differences between the correlation and causations. And the second thing is that it is very important to let the information flows effectively because it could have effect on the people's life and especially for the economics. So how about you, Omar?
Well, the things that I learned the most from reading this book is that there are a lot of things in our daily life activities that can be correlated to the economic theory. Sometimes things that I wouldn't have not thought have any correlation with economic theory have a connection to it. So this book made me realize how important the impact of people activities to the world of economics.